You might think being an American abroad comes with advantages. But here's the shocking twist. Some countries are now shutting their doors to U.S. citizens. In 2025, shifting policies and rising global tensions have triggered a wave of forced departures. But these aren't random acts. There's always a deeper reason behind the headlines. Governments worldwide are tightening immigration laws, enforcing stricter residency rules, and even directly targeting foreigners, including Americans. Some do it for politics, others for control. Sudden visa cancellations, detentions, and unexpected policy changes are leaving professionals, students, retirees, and even dual citizens with no choice but to pack up and leave. Whether it's geopolitical struggles, increased surveillance, or immigration crackdowns, Americans are learning the hard way that not every country welcomes them anymore. Here are 10 nations where U.S. citizens are being told to leave. Let's uncover why and what it means for those affected. Number 10, Iran. Ever thought your passport was a key to freedom? For many Americans in Iran, it feels more like a target on their back. In 2025, Iran continues to crack down on foreign nationals, and Americans are among the top targets. The government frequently accuses them of espionage, subversion, or simply being in the wrong place at the wrong time. The U.S. State Department has reported a sharp rise in detentions, with at least 10 American citizens imprisoned in 2024 alone. The charges? Everything from alleged espionage to so-called hostile activities, a vague term Iran uses to silence dissent. The high-profile case of Iranian-American journalist Jason Rezaian, jailed for over a year on espionage charges in 2014, serves as a grim warning. Iran's government has intensified its crackdown on dual citizens, using them as political pawns in diplomatic battles with the West. Environmental activists, academics, and journalists with U.S. ties have been detained under suspicious charges. With tensions between the U.S. and Iran reaching new heights, the future looks increasingly grim for American citizens in the country. Surveillance is tightening, and as diplomatic relations worsen, more Americans may be forced to leave or risk. Number 9, Saudi Arabia. Imagine being trapped in a foreign country with no way out, caught in the middle of political tensions beyond your control. That's the terrifying reality for some Americans in Saudi Arabia today. For years, U.S.-Saudi relations have been strained, but in 2025, the situation has escalated dramatically, putting American residents in a difficult position. Many U.S. citizens in the kingdom are facing strict scrutiny, with some even pressured to renounce their American citizenship. A well-known case is that of Saad al-Adi, a dual U.S.-Saudi citizen detained in 2022 for criticizing the government on social media. He's just one of over 20 Americans arrested under similar circumstances. The Saudi government is cracking down on foreign nationals, especially those seen as a political threat. In 2023, new laws made it harder for non-Saudis to maintain residency without significant financial investments, forcing many expats, including Americans, to rethink their future. In 2024 alone, visa revocations for U.S. citizens surged by 25%, often linked to political activity or suspected disloyalty. Saudi Arabia is making one thing crystal clear: political dissent won't be tolerated even if you hold dual citizenship. With U.S.-Saudi relations growing more unstable, the fate of American expats in the kingdom remains highly uncertain. Number 8, China. What happens when the rules shift overnight? For American expats in China, this unsettling reality is becoming all too familiar. As tensions between the U.S. and China escalate in 2025, American citizens are increasingly at the mercy of unpredictable government actions. China has always maintained strict control over foreign nationals, but in recent years, its stance toward Americans has turned more aggressive. Amid ongoing disputes over trade wars, cybersecurity, and global politics, over 30 U.S. citizens have been detained or expelled in just the past year, accused of violating Chinese laws or engaging in so-called subversive activities. Visa policies have also tightened. In 2024, China revoked more than 1,000 U.S. work and residency permits, primarily affecting professionals in technology, journalism, and activism. This is part of a larger effort to safeguard Chinese national security and reduce foreign influence. American businesses are feeling the heat too. Increased scrutiny, unexpected fines, and license renewals have made operations nearly impossible. Some major U.S. firms have already withdrawn, with employment for Americans in China expected to drop by 20% in the next year. For those still in China, the risks, detainment, financial penalties, or forced removal have never been higher. Number 7. Russia. What happens when you find yourself caught in a geopolitical storm? For many Americans in Russia, that nightmare is now a reality. As tensions between the U.S. and Russia hit new highs, life for American citizens in the country has become increasingly dangerous. By 2025, Russia has turned into a hostile ground for U.S. nationals. Detentions, expulsions, and visa revocations have skyrocketed. Over the past year alone, more than 15 Americans have been arrested, many subjected to harsh interrogations and imprisonment under suspicious charges. The Russian government frequently accuses them of espionage, political meddling, and undesirable activities. Visa restrictions have tightened dramatically. In late 2024, Russia revoked over 500 American work and residency visas, a shocking increase compared to previous years. These measures, widely seen as retaliation against Western sanctions, reflect Russia's growing distrust of foreign nationals, especially Americans. New laws in 2025 have made it nearly impossible for Americans to gain permanent residency or invest in key industries. U.S. expatriates report increased harassment, particularly those linked to activism or politics. With hostility rising, Russia is making it clear Americans are no longer welcome. Number 6, Turkey. What happens when a country shifts its political stance overnight, making foreigners feel unwelcome? That's exactly what many Americans are experiencing in Turkey in 2025. As the government tightens its grip, U.S. citizens are facing growing hostility and stricter regulations. Under President Recep Tayyip Erdogan's leadership, Turkey has become increasingly wary of foreign influence, particularly from the United States. This shift has had a direct impact on the American expatriate community. In 2024 alone, over 1,000 U.S. citizens had their visas revoked or were handed deportation orders, a dramatic surge from previous years. Many were accused of political activism, social media criticism, or supporting opposition groups. Beyond individuals, American businesses are also under fire. U.S. firms are facing intense scrutiny, unexpected fines, and restricted investments. As diplomatic ties between Turkey and the U.S. deteriorate, life for Americans in Turkey is growing more unstable. Number 5, North Korea. Ever imagined being stuck in a country with no escape? For Americans in North Korea, this is a terrifying reality. Known for its extreme isolation and unpredictable leadership, North Korea remains one of the most dangerous places for U.S. citizens in 2025. Although only a small number of Americans live there, the risk of arrest is shockingly high. In 2024, 3 U.S. citizens were detained under vague accusations of hostile acts against the state, a charge that could mean anything from criticizing the government to an innocent mistaken behavior. North Korea views foreigners, especially Americans, with deep suspicion. The case of Otto Warmbier, a college student imprisoned in 2016 who later died after his release, remains a chilling reminder of the brutal treatment detainees can face. Despite repeated U.S. government warnings, some Americans still enter the country, risking their freedom and their lives. With tensions escalating and the regime tightening its grip, the situation grows more dangerous by the day. Number 4, Venezuela. What do you do when the country you've come to call home suddenly becomes a hostile place? For Americans in Venezuela, this nightmare is unfolding in 2025. As the country plunges deeper into political and economic chaos, U.S. citizens are increasingly becoming targets of a government intent on defending its power. In 2024, relations between the U.S. and Venezuela took a sharp turn for the worse. Over 100 Americans were detained or expelled, many accused of espionage or trying to sabotage the government. Venezuela's suspicion of American influence has been growing, particularly after the U.S. supported opposition groups and imposed sanctions. The situation worsened as American businesses faced severe restrictions, forcing many to scale back or shut down. Venezuela's economic collapse marked by extreme inflation and a devalued currency, has crippled foreign companies. With protests and unrest escalating, the government has turned its focus to foreigners, making life for Americans even more dangerous. Number 3, Egypt. What happens when a country you've settled into suddenly turns against you? For many Americans in Egypt, 2025 has brought an unsettling shift, making life increasingly difficult. With rising political instability and stricter government control, U.S. citizens are feeling immense pressure to leave. In 2024, Egypt introduced harsh new laws aimed at reducing foreign influence, leading to the revocation of over 300 work and residency permits for Americans. These measures seem to be a direct response to fears that the U.S. is backing opposition movements. The situation escalated in 2023 when 2 American citizens were arrested for spreading false information after attending a human rights protest. Although later released, their ordeal exposed how foreigners, especially Americans, are treated with deep suspicion. Number 2, Cuba. What happens when tension between 2 nations becomes so intense that foreigners are no longer safe? This is the grim reality Americans are facing in Cuba by 2025. The Cuban government is becoming more aggressive toward foreign nationals, especially Americans, pushing many into a dangerous situation. Relations between Cuba and the U.S. have worsened, especially after the U.S. placed new restrictions on American tourists and tightened policies for expatriates in 2022. In 2024, the U.S. State Department reported a significant rise in Americans detained or expelled from Cuba, with over 100 cases. Many of these detentions stemmed from Cuba's anger over the U.S. involvement in internal matters, like the 2021 protests. American businesses aren't safe either, facing intense scrutiny and stricter rules. Number 1, Myanmar, Burma. What happens when a country's political shift makes foreigners feel unsafe? For Americans in Myanmar, this has sadly become their reality since the 2021 military coup. The country, once a place of opportunity, has grown increasingly hostile toward foreigners, especially Americans. Myanmar's military government, led by the ruthless military junta, has cracked down on anyone seen as a threat, particularly Americans. Tensions reached a boiling point in 2024 and 2025 as the junta targeted U.S. nationals, especially those involved in human rights and political advocacy. In 2024 alone, over 30 Americans were detained, many accused of violating Myanmar's harsh political laws. These detentions were largely seen as a direct response to the U.S. supporting Myanmar's pro-democracy movement. With countries tightening their borders, it's clear that geopolitical tensions are reshaping the global landscape, making life tougher for American nationals abroad.